was exceptionally creepy with that mustache.
The camera has 10 pounds, so like, my mustache.
I'm sucking it in so we can have more room in here.
All right.
Okay, so welcome to the latest edition of Getting Engaged.
Online, in life, and at work.
I'm going to remember this time. I'm Russell Hooker.
I'm Yukari Gillis.
And we have a guest. We have Mr.
Mike Vardy.
Mike Vardy. Mike Vardy.
Vardy.
Mike Vardy, who we've wanted on this show for a long time, actually. And it just sort of really came together in like a day. Like, hey, you want to do it? Yeah, what time? 4? 4? You want to show up? Okay, cool, let's do it. 4.
Yeah.
So it's all sort of wrapped up really well because we had this little interaction on, was it Google Plus?
Sorry.
You had, sorry, can you see my shoulder?
That's okay.
Sorry.
I just feel like getting Hey.
Hi.
Go ahead. Never mind me. I'm here. Go.
I mind you. We should actually introduce Mike first.
Yes.
Because he's known quite around for doing about a million things.
Yeah.
Right.
One of which is Movember, and I'm trying to get him... Your eyes are here, not here, so I'm going to try to make as much eye contact as I can. Movember, obviously, but you're also the editor for Lifehack.
Yep.
Lifehack, and your World of Productivity website, which is Vardy.me.
Vardy.me, yeah, and you can find all my other stuff through there.
Cool. Yeah, so productivity, and you know what, we'd probably love to have you on our show for some other time for more of a productivity and podcasting kind of thing. But that's not why we're here today.
Well,
Yep.
Yukari posted, what did you post on Google Plus that got Mike's attention?
Yeah, like we're filming this weekend. What should we talk about? And like Mike Vardy comes in and says, Quora. That's
Quora.
what we should talk about. So
That's
like,
really annoying. Did you say it like that?
So I was like, okay, what about Quora? And what do you think, Mike?
well, I think like Quora came in early last year.
Yeah, and I'll be blunt. I've kind of badmouthed Quora since on the show a few times, only because it was one more thing I didn't have time to do.
And as a productivity guy, I should be bashing it as well.
Right.
Fair enough. But you brought it up, and it's good enough from an engagement standpoint. Yeah, why has Quora got value?
Well, I think it came up because I was kind of thinking about how I've been using Google Plus, and I recently wrote about how I plan on using Google Plus because I wasn't sure I was going to fit into my equation in terms of all of my online presences, which there are a few, and I started to really look at Quora again to figure out what the value would be and how I want to use it, and I really think that there's a value to it that may have been overlooked when all that buzz happened. Like everyone kind of dove right in, and then all of a sudden there was just a big bunch of overwhelm.
Right.
And now all of a sudden maybe it can creep back into people's into what people can use to rather than maybe searching on Google for answers,
Right.
or if they want to rather than go to Wikipedia, because Wikipedia, let's face it, is not the Bible per se.
Right.
No, very well.
tend
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there are some uses for Quora that maybe were overlooked initially, and now maybe with the dawning of Google Plus as a new sort of medium that people can use, maybe Quora and some of these other ones can come back into play.
And I should stop you just for one sec to those that may not know what Quora is. Quora is like a Q&A sort of, pose a question, it's Yahoo Answers, linked, like all these other platforms have this,
Right.
but why is Quora, what's Quora given us that all these other things aren't?
Well, you think about Quora and you think about, each, like Twitter, for example. Twitter initially was for bulletins,
Yeah.
People started to use it, they started to think outside the box when it came to Twitter.
Yeah.
And Facebook was, like, here's how I'm doing,
Yeah.
and Google Plus kind of became, they didn't know what Google Plus was initially, and I think Quora was a place where you go to ask questions and find answers.
Right.
And I think that people, now that they've figured out how to use social media differently and different, they're thinking outside the box.
Right.
I think the Quora, because a lot of thought leaders appear on there, a lot of people, like Clay Johnson just talked about his information diet on there, new book he's got coming out, and all of a sudden, boom, people started to pay attention. Who's this Clay Johnson guy? What's this information diet about? And all of a sudden, some of the other thought leaders started to chime in on this question. And all of a sudden, it becomes more of a validation of what's going on, as opposed to just going into Google and typing in information diet, and you get like a slew of searches.
Right.
And things like Yahoo Answers really have been around long enough where just, a lot of anonymous show up, or even spam asking questions. So I think that for me, especially since I work for Lifehack and I'm doing a lot of questions, like for example, one of the questions I asked is what percentage of guys can pull off a mustache, especially after a Movember, because I'm certainly not going to keep it.
Fair enough. And as someone standing a foot away from you, I appreciate that.
I don't want to look like an extra from Reno 911 forever.
Fair point.
And other people, one of the other questions I asked is my Cincinnati Bengals. They're a big fan of the Bengals. I'm like, in 2011, have they finally been able to shed that tag, the Bungles? And the interesting thing is that questions can be redirected into other questions so that you get the answers that you want, which is something that Google won't do.
Okay.
Right.
You also can ask people the questions that, if you really want to find an answer, you can spend Quora points on asking certain people directly. So it sends them the question directly. And for example, I asked, what are your uses for Quora? How are people using Quora? I spent some of my Quora points, and all of a sudden I got a message saying, your question is directed to what is Quora for? So by one of the Quora experts. So there is some engagement there to help you find the answers you're looking for. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you see interviews conducted on Quora. I think that'd be a really great way, because you're seeing Twitter interviews happening, right?
Yep, absolutely.
I think Quora would be a great, that's what the platform's for. So why not, right?
Very interesting.
And that's my big worry is Quora's question, answer. Where's the engagement?
Right.
And where are we building relationships? Where are we? But I think you answered that well, and that these questions can lead to other questions, or you can spend Quora points and get to the actual people that have the answers that you need, and that could strike other conversations.
Well, one of the other examples is I talked about this on one of the podcasts I do, and one of the questions that came up was, Quora, what the hell? Like, my buddy was, why are you using it? And I went into Quora and asked some questions, and it led me to a podcaster in Seattle, who I then engaged with and said, what podcasting equipment do you use? And she started to and she's like right close to us. Yeah. So all of a sudden it created this friendship, which then we, on Twitter and stuff. So there is a way to get to there. It's again, just thinking a little bit outside the box. I think the Quora, out of all of the ones, I mean, LinkedIn's another one that I'm starting to explore a bit more, but I tend to just use it as a place to post my resume and ping,
most people
stuff,
do.
right?
Yeah.
But Quora, I think, has some interesting value to it. There's room. There's room because I mean, how do you want to use Quora? It begs the question of how did you want to use Twitter? How did you want to use Facebook? How did you want to use Google+? I think the answer is however you want to use it.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
That's great. And really, I think the bottom line is you get out of it what you put into it.
Absolutely.
Right.
And if you want to use LinkedIn to put a resume up, then that's what you're using it for. If you want to Quora for an actual engagement tool, most people aren't. So you could actually get quite a bit out of it. So thanks, Mike. We learned stuff.
Every once in a while.
All right. Well, thank you. I think we'll cut it there. I mean, that's quite
awesome.
You may actually have convinced me to actually use Quora again. I barely used it when I first started, and now I'm...
Or at least stop the bashing.
Exactly. At least stop the hate.
Yeah.
Stop the hate. So again, thank you, Mike Vardy, for joining us today. And check out Vardy.me to check out what else he's doing. And hopefully we'll have you back on the show. Or we'd love to have you back on the show.
Yeah,
not hopefully. We really want you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again. That's the latest edition of Getting Engaged.
Online, in life, and at work.
That's...
Yukari Peerless.
This is...
Russell Loder.
I'm letting you do all the talking.
Is this a test?
It is. As long as you get my last name right, you pass.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.